Hey there, knife people. Sea Monsters here. I'm trying to cram together a whole bunch of knife vids. I have one of the rare moments where I have the house kinda to myself, but it's only for a limited time, so I've got to make these short and sweet. These are really show and tell videos, so you're not going to get a lot of detailed information from this, but I'm just sharing with you some pieces, recent acquisitions that I've added to the collection that I think you might find interesting. And while most of my videos are on traditional slip joints, you'll see a very non-slip joint box in front of you. It is a Benchmade black class axis locking arrangement, which means we've got a modern folding knife to look at today. But what is it? Unfortunately for me, my crappy camera doesn't allow you to read this box so well, so you don't know, do you? Unless you read the title like we always put in all YouTube videos to make them searchable. So you really do know. This is the 908 Axis Stryker II knife from Benchmade. The Stryker series of knives aren't new to Benchmade. I'm not going to get into who Benchmade is. If you're reading, watching, observing this video, you already know who Benchmade is. And if you don't, you'll soon know who Benchmade is. But suffice it to say, they're one of the premier modern folding knife companies in America and worldwide. This here, this Stryker II Axis Stryker, is the latest take on the Stryker series of knives. The previous addition to this had a liner lock. This edition features the much famed, much heralded, much used, much loved, seldom reviled Axis locking system. I'm going to take a second to point something out. I've watched a number of videos, and I can barely speak English, so far be it for me to criticize, but I hear a lot of people saying access. That's an access locking system. It's not an access, it's an axis. See the blue card in front of you? AXIS is axis. Like, maybe a geometric reference or a functional reference, turning on an axis, that kind of thing. Not access. Though I will say that the axis locking system does provide better access to the blade of the knife, because the axis locking system has particularly smooth functionality, as you'll see shortly. This is a fairly good sized knife. How good sized? About over 4 3/4 in the closed position. It's pretty big. I'm not a metric guy, so for you international viewers, if there are any, it is about 125 millimeters long. If you look closely at the shape of the handle, it'll look somewhat familiar. I won't tell you which other Benchmade knife uses it, but if you pay special attention to this part, this hump right here, might be somewhat similar to a knife used for triage work or paramedic work. There's your little Benchmade clue. G10 handle scales. They are, unlike many other Benchmade G10, they're kind of coarse, very grippy. And they're kind of grippy because this is a tactical folding knife. I won't use it as such. This will be, for me, an EDC type knife, just a fairly large one. One of the things that I will point out, since we're staring at the profile of the knife, one of the things that makes this more pocketable than many others, and I tend to be a bit of a Spyderco guy, you guys know that because I don't do videos on it, but that's what I typically carry, is a Spyderco. It's either Spyderco or Benchmade's, typically. This distance here, or if you prefer, let's do it this way, isn't that broad. It's only like 1.5 inches. When I say only like 1.5 inches, that's not particularly slender, but neither is it particularly broad. A lot of Spydercos, because they have thumb hole deployment, end up being closer to 2 inches, which occupies a lot of space in the pocket unless you have huge pockets. This is going to occupy a little less. It's also a very slim knife, which is one of my favorite things about Benchmade's largest competitor, Spyderco. Their knives tend to be fairly thin. Another thing that makes it pocketable. You can see that this is pillar constructed, complete pass-through, so super easy maintenance. Pocket clip on this, you may or may not be able to see it, is fairly low ride, though not completely low ride. So you're going to have a good 1/2 inch sticking out above the pocket. But with it being black and this loop over design, it'll be pretty subtle. Most people won't notice it. There's your Axis locking mechanism right there. It is pivoted. Got a nice thick blade stop, which is good to have in a knife like this because it is designed to be used heavily. It's thumb stud deployment with a little Access, ACCESS, area for deployment. There you go, fully deployed. I believe this is a 3.5 inch blade. Yeah, closer to 3 3/4. 3 5/8 if we split it. Like several of its predecessors, it features, when I say several, at least a couple. There's usually a full size, this size, and then a smaller size. I believe this is the 908 edition, by the way, if I didn't tell you that. 903 is the smaller edition. This is technically a drop point, though if you look closely at the blade, it looks more like a spear point, which is what I was going to tell you a moment ago. It is available in a Tanto, or Tonto, if you prefer, edition. I actually prefer this. It is fairly thin, but if you look at that tip, it's thick at the tip, kind of like spear points are, which means great for piercing. But it also has a fair amount of belly to it, not a ton, but a fair amount. Got a nicely done swedge at the top, got a flat area right along here, make sharpening easy. This is a fine stonewash satin finish, nicely done by Benchmade. It is 154 cm blade steel, which is a great steel with Benchmade. It's not as good as S30V though, I'm going to tell you that right out of the gate. The predecessor to this knife, the blade steel on that was D2, which is actually a little harder and harder to sharpen. From my standpoint, the D2 will hold its edge quite a bit longer than the 154 cm, but it also tends to chip, and you're going to work to sharpen it. The 154 cm, not going to be as brittle, going to hold up a little better, and is a little less likely to stain. And when I say stain, I mean rust. Stainless doesn't mean rust proof, it means less likely to rust. The rust is the stain, hence the term stainless. Okay, so one of the interesting things about this design, and I kind of wish they hadn't used that triage shape right here. While there's jimping, nothing fancy's favorite stuff, right here is a small rise of jimping, and your thumb kind of naturally wants to go there. There's also some jimping on the spine of the blade, but oddly, it's located down from the hump. Now, because of the way I hold the knife, I actually make use of both. I have part of my thumb, the meat of my thumb, tucked in here, and part of it, as you can see there, that just ends up how I kind of like to hold it. There are also jimping on the inside here, and some jimping there. Hopefully you can see that. If not, again, take my word for it. I wouldn't lie to you about that. It's there. And there are grooves in the G10. This is a very grippy knife. Whole heck of a lot more grippy than the Griptilian, oddly enough. Of course, with the Axis locking system, and I'm not going to explain it to you, but I'm going to say that makes deploying the knife super smooth. I've never had an Axis lock fail. I've heard people talk about it. They say that the Omega spring, which you won't see on camera, but there's a little tiny spring that goes over that travel bar right there. Supposedly that's broken. I've had Axis knives for years and years and years and years and years, and I've used the crap out of them. Never had one break. Well, it's possible. I've never done it. So I have zero concern about durability. This knife is blazing fast out of the blade, out of the handle. You can deploy it blazing fast. Hey, this is a really nice knife. This is, I just wish that hump weren't there and that had more of a little thumb ramp on the spine of the blade. That's what I prefer, but this works fine. It's not a problem. Very durable stainless steel liners. They are skeletonized, they're drilled. So this is a very light knife. For the size that it is, this weighs almost nothing. Matter of fact, nothing fancy. Maybe you should do a better review than I'm doing of this. I'm just doing a show and tell, but maybe you ought to do a review of this. This seems like a knife that you'd like. Now, I'm guessing that knock that I'm giving it on that ramp is going to bug you too, and I think you have even bigger hands than me, so it'll maybe be either more or less aggravating for you. But that's a big old blade, and a thin, light, portable, strong folding knife system. I bought this for 153 bucks. It's worth every penny of that. This knife will outlast me, and I'll end up going down to my sons, and for all I know, down to grandchildren that I don't have just yet. I'm old enough to have it, but haven't gotten it yet. So I'm able to spend a little money on blades till the kids show up, and then I'll have to spend it on presents for grandchildren. But until that happens, I can show you fun stuff like this. Highly recommend you check this knife out. It's one of the better modern folding knife designs I've seen in the past couple of years, and certainly worthy of a look if you need to get yourself a new modern folding knife. And don't let the black box fool you that you have to be a policeman or in the military to get it. You don't. One of the great things about Benchmade is that their black class, aside from automatics, are available to any plain old civilian. By the way, nice and smooth here. Always good when the edges are smooth. Super high quality, in case I didn't tell you that. I know I'm just kind of rambling and this is a little fractured, but again, it's just a show and tell. Nothing more, nothing less. Anyway, there you have it. Hope that piqued your interest. Go take a look at a Benchmade. You might just find you like it. Take care. Have a great day.